Hi again, I'm Walt, more known as Dan Wilson, back in the workshop once again today. And another kind of a rainy day here in southeast Missouri. Just a good day to get a few things done in the old workshop over here. I thought I'd take a few minutes and show you guys some of the tools I have around here in the shop. Today I want to talk about my beloved Delta brand miter saw. I've had this saw for quite a few years now, and I have had this out on more job sites than I can possibly count over the years. It's been a really good tool to have. If you're into woodworking or other hobbies or interest where you need to be cutting some lumber, I've used this saw not for cutting lumber. Also, I've cut plastic pipe. I can put a metal cutting blade in it if need be and cut some maybe rebar, metal pipe, or just about anything. Just a great tool to have. So for today, I want to show you guys a little bit about how to use a miter saw. Again, my videos are for beginners or people who are unfamiliar with these type tools, or maybe just getting started. So you seasoned carpenters out there who've done this stuff for years, if you want to go start laughing at me, go right ahead. I don't care. I want folks to have fun with my videos and enjoy what they're watching. And as I said before, if you find it boring or interesting, just skip the video. You can go watch whatever you want to. It makes me no difference. One of the most important things on any type of tool, such as a miter saw, a table saw, even handheld saws and so on, make sure that you have a very good sharp blade, which this one is. I just put this one on here not too long ago. And what I use are what I call carbide tip blades, which last a lot longer than regular steel blades, and they cut more accurately, a lot cleaner cuts, less splintering, and things of that nature. So hopefully you can see this okay. This is a carbide tip blade that has been doing very well. Okay, one thing that's very important to me with my tools or any of my equipment, I like keeping things clean as possible. Of course, when you're cutting any type of material, it's going to get a little messy. There's going to be some sawdust, obviously. It's a good practice when you get done at the end of the day to clean your tools up. And what I do is just take usually a simple shop towel like this, give it a quick wipe down. If it's really incredibly dirty, I'll take my air hose and air nozzle, blow all the sawdust and stuff out of it, and so on and so forth. I mentioned a while back in another video a product that I use very commonly in my shop is stuff called PB Blaster. It's a great lubricant, catalyst, great rust remover, and also a great cleaner. So once in a while a tool will get a little rust buildup on it. Sometimes I've had to use some of my tools out on a job site, and a little rain shower comes up, and I can't get stuff loaded up quickly enough, you know, and they'll sometimes get a little rust on them. So periodically, and usually about maybe once a year, I'll take some PB Blaster, and it also makes a great cleaner for tools. So I'll just spray a little bit on a shop towel. This one just got a good cleaning here a couple weeks ago, so it's in really good shape. But the PB Blaster does a great job. If you got just like a little light surface rust or whatever, and just wipe it down with your shop towel, keep this all nice and clean. And one very important thing that I want to point out to you guys, especially if you're new to woodworking, carpentry, what the heck ever, using a tool like this or even a table saw like I mentioned before, any type of cutting tool, I want to very strongly stress that this blade right here, when this tool is in operation, this blade does not know the difference between your finger or another part of your body than a piece of wood or whatever material you're cutting. Extremely important. Keep your hands well away from the blade when you're cutting. Okay? Now if you notice, we have this nice blade guard on here. As I pull the saw down to make a cut, then this raises up to clear the material, just like that. Very important thing to have. Now, a very neat thing about a miter saw is that a lot of times we need to cut angle cuts, usually 45-degree angle, like for door casing, window casing, and things of that nature. And we want to do a 45 so we don't have any exposed ends on the wood. And when I have more time another day, I'm going to show you guys some of my work in action. I'll be cutting some wood here about early next week for a project that I got coming up I'll be working on. So for today, just want to show you the tool and kind of some basic stuff that we can do with it. So if you notice here, it has, I don't know if you can see this in the video or not, it has an indexed dial, not really a dial, what would I call it? An index scale, I should say, that will show me where the blade is in relation to the fence. So before we get into that, I almost forgot. I'm going to show you guys another very important procedure to do with your miter saw and lots of other tools you might be working with. Right here I have what I call a tri-square. Some people call this a rafter square. It just doesn't matter what you call it. It's a very good tool for squaring up your saw blade. So what we want to do with the miter saw, we have two basic angles that we want to make sure the saw blade is square to. One is to make sure the blade is square to the table, which is this right here, and also to make sure the blade is square to the fence, which is this right back here. These little squares like this. Sorry about the rain noise. It's raining today and it's noisy here in the garage. Hopefully you can hear me okay. So usually what I do first, I'm going to check my miter saw for square with the table. In other words, this is what I call vertical square. So to do that, I'll usually push the square right up against the fence like this and push it right in against the blade with the blade raised up like this. And I'll just look straight on. And right now my saw is squared up really good because I keep it in really good condition. I just did this a couple weeks ago just to demonstrate a little bit on things to check periodically on your miter saw to make sure it's still in square. What happens is if you use this tool every day, like when I was more active in construction, this saw was in use almost every day of the week, and it was transported in my vehicle from job site to job site to job site. So what happens is a tool like this or just about any other, when you truck it around a lot, it's going to get bounced around and this and that can cause your saw to get out of square. So we want to make sure it's squared up so that we get into some critical cutting. Like I said, cutting a door window casing, for example, we want it really, really tight cuts. We can't afford to have the saw out of square in either direction. So right now I'm checking it for vertical square. I'm going to put my square right against the fence, push that right up against the blade, and I can see that my saw is like perfectly square. It's like it's right on the mark that way. The next way we're going to check it is by laying the square flat down against the fence like this. This time I'm going to pull the blade down a little bit, and I hope I got a good angle on the camera. It's kind of hard to do this by myself, but this time I'm going to pull the blade in the fully down position like this, and then push the square up against the blade with the square against the fence, just like this. So anyway, once we know the saw is squared up good in both directions against the fence and square to the table, we're ready to do some cutting. I've been asked a few times what to do if the saw is not square. So what happens there is we have an adjustment screw right back here, which is our, I don't know if we'd call that zenith angle or whatever. I'm a little rusty on some of the terminology. But this is to adjust the blade like this way and this way, which is in relation between the blade and the table. Right down in here I was trying to show you is an adjustment screw. And you got to just loosen up here, and this will adjust up and down to get the saw back in square in relation to the table. Right over here you can see is a scale on the side here, which shows me at what angle I'm cutting. This saw happens to be not only a miter saw, this one is what we call a compound miter saw. I'll show you guys how that works here in just a minute. Okay, on the back side of the fence right here are some adjustment screws, like here and here. What I can do is, if necessary, I take these loose and take a hammer, maybe a mallet or whatever, and just very gently tap the fence. Because what happens in this case is, if the blade is not square to the fence, it means that I don't have an adjustment for that on the saw assembly itself, so I've got to adjust the fence to match the blade. So that's how we do that. Loosen up here. On the other side over here is the same deal. You know, I'll get my hand in there right now. We can take those loose, and we got some adjustment here in the fence to get our blade squared up with the fence again. Okay, so that's just some real basic stuff. I want to show you guys here is what's really cool about this miter saw and almost all of them out there. There's a lot of good brands. I'm not here to endorse certain brand names or whatever. Mine happens to be a Delta brand, which is a very good brand of tools. I like Delta power tools very much. So what's cool about this is by releasing this lever right here, I got to loosen up this knob right here, push this lever down. I can move my saw around different angles. Another neat thing that's very handy, because our most common angle cuts are going to be 45-degree angles, and sometimes we're going to cut 22.5-degree angles, which of course is half of 45. In a lot of cases we want to do a cut for whatever it might be, where our end result is going to be an overall 45-degree angle versus a 90-degree angle. So in that case we're going to cut two 22.5-degree cuts on the board to achieve an overall 45. In most cases though, we're going to be cutting 45-degree angles to achieve an end result of a 90-degree angle. And what's cool is most miter saws have an indent on here when you loosen your knob up, and a lot of different saws work differently. It's just how this one works. It has an indent right here, so I can loosen this up, slide this around like that. Now if you heard that click or not, it clicks into position exactly on 45 degrees. So I go to make my cut like this. If I need a left hand 45 degree cut like that. In other cases I'm going to do a right-handed 45 degree cut. So I slide the saw around like this. Again, it clicks into position just like that on the right hand 45 degree mark, and I'm ready to go for a right hand 45 degree angle cut. Also, we have indents at 22.5 degrees right, which is right there, for a 22.5 degree cut. Same thing on the left hand side right over here. Little indent right there. Lock it down, and now we're good for a left hand 22.5 degree cut just like that. Beyond that, this saw can cut anywhere from 0. We have another indent, of course, back at 0 right there. Clicks in place, lock it down, and we're back in the mode for straight cutting. Makes it very, very handy because the indents on the saw are super handy to have, because many times I'm switching between a straight cut then a left 45, straight cut to a right 45, and it's just like over here, over here, over here, and all over the place. So it's a big time saver having those indents on there. So let's see what else. This saw can cut anywhere from 0, which is a straight cut, straight 90 degree cut in relation to the fence, like right there, all the way over to about 50 degrees is about its maximum range, which is more than enough because it's very, very rare that I've ever got to cut an angle that is more than 45 degrees. I'm going to show you guys too. I got the camera on. What's cool? It's a really cool saw. I like it a lot. So this is also a compound miter saw. So what I can do here, I have a knob on the back of the saw right back here. Loosen that up, which is a little hard to do. There it goes. Just loosen this up, and this saw is able to tilt like this, all the way over like that. And I can bring it back over this way, and it goes back to 0. This particular saw will only tilt to the left, which is usually okay, because what I can do, I do very few compound miter cuts. If you don't know what a compound miter cut is, I'm trying to think the best way to explain that. It basically is, I'll bring this over here and lock this saw down in this angle at about 45 degrees, which is right there, and then lock it down, which is a little bit of a hassle, but this is what we call a compound miter cut. And for the most part, we use that for putting in stuff, what we call crown molding, which we put in around the ceilings on houses, whatever we're working on. And because the crown molding is going to sit at an angle against the ceiling, it's going to be cut in such a way that we can do, it's like a double 45. Because we're going to need a 45 degree cut, just like we would with window or door casing. Only in this case, because of the tilt of the board, I wish I had a piece of crown to show you. I don't have it on hand right now. Because the board is angled against the ceiling, it means we have to do a compound miter cut, because we're cutting a 45, not just a straight 45, but also a angled 45, if that makes any sense. But that's the entire purpose behind why this saw is capable of doing that. So in that case, I slide my board on here, and I've got, and well, I don't quite have my 45 going the other way. This can get a little complicated. Like I said, I'm not a full-time professional carpenter, but I do what I can. So for a compound 45, I'm going to tilt my saw over to 45 degrees on the scale here, and lock it in on 45 left on my scale down here. And because this saw will only bevel to the left, it means that I've always got to do a left-hand cut, which is no major deal, because when I go to cut my other piece, I just flip the board over and I do my cut on the back side of the board versus the front side of the board, so I get the same end result. If I can, I don't know if I explain that very well or not. But this is how we do a compound 45 degree miter cut. So the saw blade comes down like this at 45 degrees this way and 45 degrees this way, and make the cut just like that. So I'm going to square the saw back up, lock back in on 0, loosen back up over here on this knob. A very important thing is I want to make sure if I've been doing any compound miter cutting, the saw will normally come right back to 0. But in a case like this, before I go back to straight cutting, I'll make sure I've got my knob locked down good like that. Okay, make sure I got good movement on the saw. The other reason why I keep my square handy is because sometimes you can get sawdust buildup and other things, you know, that just comes from cutting. If you're not careful to clean this off thoroughly, you can bring your saw back in what you think is back to true 0, but it won't be because there's some crud and stuff on this adjustment screw or somewhere else in the assembly. So anytime I do that, bring the saw back to vertical cutting and bring it back down again, put my square back on. It just takes just a few seconds just to make sure that the blade is still square to the table. Very important thing to do. So I'll bring it down like that, slide my square back in, and once again my saw is right back on the 0 mark vertical. That means I'm good for straight cutting once again. But one more thing, very important, when you're working with a miter saw or just about any other type of corded power saw, make sure that your cord does not get anywhere near the blade. I've seen a few guys cut their cord in two, unfortunately. So we want to make sure the cord is well back on the back side of the saw. I usually tuck it down like this and pull it back around in such a way that it's not going to get into the blade. Even more importantly, I want to make sure that the cord is not out here in front of me, because most of the time we're using an extension cord to hook up the cord on the saw. So I got to be very careful not to have something out here around my feet that I'm going to trip over and then possibly have an injury from using the saw. So very important in any workspace, keep it clean, uncluttered, and make sure you look down at the area you're standing in, that you're in your work area. Make sure you don't have any cords or pieces of wood, boards, or anything like that laying around that you might accidentally trip over that would cause you to maybe slip and get your finger or something into the saw blade. Very, very important safety tip. Another very important safety tip that I wanted to mention is when you're working with tools like this or other type of power tools, make sure that you're not wearing some type of jewelry, such as a necklace, a bracelet. I probably wouldn't even have this ragged shirt on. It's just a little chilly today, so in most cases I would not have a shirt like this on. The main point is make sure that you don't have, say, a bracelet, a necklace, or anything that's going to get tangled up in the tool and possibly cause you to become injured. So before you start to use a tool like this, or a table saw, any other type of power tool whatsoever, make sure you remove any type of jewelry. Years ago I was married for about 3 days, or I don't know, it wasn't very long, 3.5 years anyway. I've since been single for quite a while now. But when I was married, I would even take off my wedding ring when working around tools like this, just as a safety precaution. So I don't have anything on my hands or fingers that's going to get caught anywhere on the tool or cause any kind of a problem. So a very important thing to keep in mind. If you have long hair, which I used to in my hippie years, it's a little shorter now, make sure that your hair's pulled back. I guess this would be more for the ladies than the guys, I don't know. Make sure your hair's not dangling down, where your hair might get caught up in the blade or other part of the tool and possibly cause you to have an injury. So very, very important to remember. Keep your hair neatly tucked away. Keep your jewelry, necklaces, bracelets, rings, everything out of the way before you try to operate a tool like this. So anyway, I hope some of my pointers help you guys out. If you're fairly new to these type of tools, if you're just starting out and getting into woodworking or carpentry or whatever you're trying to do, hope my pointers help you out. The main thing is that I want to help keep you guys safe. I want to be able to teach you how to use tools like this to make your life so much easier and more enjoyable, and most of all, to keep you guys safe and injury free. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I thank you for checking it out, and I hope some of the pointers I passed along will help you guys out and keep you safe and help you enjoy your woodworking, your carpentry, or whatever it is that you're working on. So stay safe, and I hope I can help you guys out some more things in the future as part of what I call the How to Do It video series. Again, I'm Walt Moore, also known as Dan Wilson. Thanks for checking out the video. If you like my videos, be sure to subscribe to my channel. Give it a thumbs up. I appreciate that a lot. And I will see you guys on the next video.